Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today I have Nick Stone on my channel today. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, Miss Queenie.
How you doing?
You know, I think as well as anyone can be doing right now.
Okay. Tell us a little about yourself.
So I'm Nick Stone, author of a number of books. Dear Martin, Odd One Out, Jackpot, Clean Getaway, Shuri, and the next one, the one that's either just came out, it's coming up or just coming out, is Dear Justyce, which is the sequel to Dear Martin. And yeah, I write things, books, essays, stuff. It's a wonderful life, getting paid money to make things up, Queenie. It's a wonderful life.
Okay. Let's talk about each one of your books. Okay. First, we're going to talk about Dear Martin. Tell us a little about Dear Martin.
So Dear Martin follows a 17-year-old Black boy who has a traumatic experience with racial profiling and decides to start a journal of letters to the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to see if Dr. King's teachings hold up here in the 21st century. That one was inspired by, one, the death of Jordan Davis in November 2012 in Jacksonville, Florida, and two, the death of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, and kind of the ensuing, like the stuff that happened in the country after Mike Brown's death. Black Lives Matter movement really kicked off. And I kept seeing people quote Dr. King in opposition to a thing that I really felt like he would have not only stood for, but participated in. So I decided to explore his teachings through the lens of like a 21st century teenager. Okay. That one came out in 2017. And yeah, it's probably the book I'm like most known for. It's like the most, which is weird, you know? It's like,
Okay, what about The Odd One Out?
So Odd One Out, actually, there's a copy of that one nearby that I can reach. Maybe. So Odd One Out, this one is, this one's a story about like friendship and romance and how like sometimes they collide in very interesting and unexpected ways. This follows these three little whippersnappers on the cover as they try to navigate the intersections of friendship and romance and figure out like who it's okay to fall in love with. It is a tried and true, genuine love triangle book, and it was a lot of fun to write. This is actually my favorite of all of the books that I've written, largely because it is probably the closest to my own experiences. I'll put it like that. And then it's also, I don't know, this one's just really, really special and near and dear to my heart.
Okay. Jackpot, All Bets Are Off.
Jackpot. Hey, babe. Sorry, I'm gonna get a copy brought to me. Will you bring me a copy of Jackpot and one of Dear Justyce, please? Fast. Please. I love you. So Jackpot, sorry, I was talking to my boo thing. Jackpot, interestingly enough, Jackpot was inspired by the ridiculous Powerball jackpot in 2015. Like it hit like $800 million and everybody lost it. And so this is actually the updated cover for Jackpot. So this version comes out on September 29th and it's so pretty. And like you see, like she's got like $100 bills in her hair. Hi, Black girl magic. But yeah, so this one follows a Black girl who is kind of she's kind of like the poor kid in an upper middle class neighborhood, majority white space. And she has to work to help her mother keep the bills paid. But there's a night that she sells a lottery ticket. She works at a gas station. There's a night she sells a lottery ticket worth $212 million or $106 million. It's a lot of money, worth a lot of money. I wrote this a long time ago, sorry. And the only other person to see who she believes she sold the ticket to is the richest boy in school who happened to be in the store. So like she winds up teaming up with this rich boy, and they go on this adventure trying to find this ticket. And in the process of going on the search, they come to discover some things about each other and about their different socioeconomic statuses, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And how important it is to be compassionate. So like this one, I guess I like this one. It's all right.
Okay, Clean Getaway.
Clean Getaway was my first middle grade novel.
Mm-hmm.
It came out in January. Now this one, so I had a lot of, now you're a teacher, Miss Queenie.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we met. And I had a lot of teachers with students younger than yours, like elementary school teachers, who read and loved Dear Martin, but didn't feel comfortable giving it to their like third or fourth graders, which makes a lot of sense. You know, like there's some language in Dear Martin. The way that the subject matter is handled is very teen. I wouldn't give it to I have an 8-year-old. He hasn't read Dear Martin. But he has read this. So this is Clean Getaway. So I had a lot of teachers ask me for something that touches on the same topics of Dear Martin, but is written for a younger audience. So I wrote something. This one follows a little Black boy who goes on an impromptu road trip with his white grandmother that you can see there in that RV, across the American South. And it turns out that this is a trip she tried to take in the 1960s with her African-American husband. And for reasons that Scoob, the main character, discovers along the way, she was unable to complete their trip. So it's a book that also looks at systemic racism. It also looks at like discrimination and history and the civil rights movement in a very easy to digest format for 8 to 12-year-olds. And as you can see, he's holding the Negro Traveler's Green Book on the cover because they use the Green Book plays a huge role in this story. Anybody who doesn't know what the Green Book is, go Google it. It's definitely worth your while to know what that is. Here, I actually have a copy. See, this is how you know I'm like in my office, because there's just stuff like scattered around. So they use this. Scoob is learning about history through the use of this piece of history. And he's also he's discovering that the world hasn't always been the way that it is now. And he's also discovering some things about his grandmother that he did not know, and kind of having to come to grips with the humanity of a hero of his.
Okay. And is it pronounced Shira?
Shuri.
Shuri.
Shuri. So this is the little sister of Black Panther, right? So unfortunately, we just lost Chadwick Boseman, the incredible actor who played T'Challa in the Black Panther film. But the Black Panther comics are very, very, very old. Like the Black Panther comics were started in the 1960s. And in the early, I guess 2009-ish. In the early 2000s, I'll say, a new storyteller took on the Black Panther comic books for Marvel, and they gave T'Challa a sister, and her name is Shuri. So like in the movie, we see her in the movie, but I write like her own books, right? So Shuri is a character. She's the younger sister of the Black Panther, and like I have the utmost honor and privilege of writing books about her specifically, and like these adventures that she goes on. She's like the smartest person on earth. Huge math and science nerd, loves technology. She's like the chief technological developer in Wakanda. And yeah, so we get to learn about her and what her role is. So in this volume, this came out in May, she is trying to figure out why the heart-shaped herb, which is the plant that the Black Panther has to ingest in order to become the Black Panther and get the Black Panther powers, it's dying, right? So she goes to grab some of the herb and discovers half of the field where the herb grows has been decimated. And she's trying to figure out what is poisoning the herb and why it's dying. And she and her best friend wind up going on this adventure to get to the bottom of the herb problem. There's another one of these. The next one comes out February 2nd. And that one is all about young girls going missing all across the world, and the fact that like nobody really seems to notice that they've gone missing. That one's called The Vanished. So that's the next book in the series. These covers are amazing. The artist's name is Eric Wilkerson, and he's really great. And so, yeah. So this one is out. This one's out February 2nd. And these are really fun. Like, these are really fun books to write. It's been such a privilege getting to write books for Marvel Comics.
Yes.
Dreams do come true, Miss Queenie.
Yes. And your debut, I guess, your new one coming out, Dear Justice.
Woo,
I'm hoping our library gets it. Yes.
I just got my hardcovers in the mail and I cried like a big old baby. So Dear Justice is the sequel to Dear Martin. In Dear Martin, the good kid, Justice, he makes a visit to another kid named Quan. So Quan, in the opening chapter of Dear Martin, Justice is racially profiled by a police officer.
Right.
In the next chapter, we find out that that police officer has been killed during, nobody really knows. So this is Dear Martin, by the way. So Dear Martin and Dear Justice. Okay. So in this book, the main character is like Ivy League bound. He's the captain of the debate team. He's this very, very intelligent kid who's got his head on his shoulders, and he's literally doing everything right, and he still winds up in a situation where a police officer assumes he's doing wrong and he gets in trouble for nothing, really. So yes, that police officer is killed in chapter 2 of this book, and the person who confesses to the murder is a young man that Justice grew up with named Quan. So in the second half of Dear Martin, Justice goes and visits Quan in the detention center where Quan is being detained. And so we meet Quan in Dear Martin, and then Quan gets his own book in Dear Justice.
Okay.
So Dear Justice is about Quan, and it's about all of the bits and pieces of Quan's life that added up to him making the decisions that he made and winding up in the place where he winds up, which is like locked up on murder charges. And it's, for me, this is the hardest book I have ever written, largely because so much of it is based in truth with regard to the way Black and brown kids are treated by the juvenile justice system, the way that it's assumed that they're up to no good, even at a young age. You know, like I think Quan's like 9 or 10 the first time he gets in trouble at school. But it's also about the inherent humanity in these kids and about the power of compassion, right? And the power of taking a pause to think about like what somebody might be going through that you can't see on the surface. So yes, this is September 29th, and I'm very nervous about it. But my hope is that once people come to the end of this book, they recognize how important it is to not make snap judgments about other people, and to like take a second to pause and consider that, you know, everybody is fighting some kind of battle, and the people who really need our love and compassion and encouragement the most are the ones that everybody else has given up on. Yeah.
Okay. What is your genre, and do you think you will ever write outside of your genre?
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, at this point, I already am writing in more than one genre. So like the Dear Martin, Dear Justice, Odd One Out, Clean Getaway, and Jackpot are all contemporary novels. Like they're all set in reality. They're like reality based. Realism, I guess, is the word that we would use. But then I'm also writing Shuri, which is more of a fantasy based novel. And honestly, I will write whatever comes to me. Like, I definitely have some other ideas outside of realism. Definitely will be writing for adults. I want to write some picture books. Like, the sky's the limit is how I feel about it.
Yes, yes. How did you get published, and what was your publishing journey like?
So mine was, I think, a little different than most people's. Well, I did have to. So first, you write a book, which is what I did. I wrote a book called Little Spark, which is now on Wattpad, which is, it's fun having a book on Wattpad that people actually read. So Little Spark is on Wattpad, and I wrote that book, and I tried to get that book published, and nobody would publish it. Like, it just wasn't, I guess it wasn't what people wanted it to be, or like, I guess at that point the market was saturated with the type of book that it was. So that was like a paranormal book where you had a main character who was like prophesied to do something gigantic and huge, and she was a Black girl. So like, that was like the thing that I was doing differently, was that like these characters, there were all kinds of paranormal books out at that point, but this particular character was Black because I'd never seen a paranormal story that had a Black main character. But nobody would buy that. So I wound up shelving that. The agent that I got to represent that project cut me loose because she was unable to sell it. And she also recognized that like she was a little out of her depth with YA because she'd never really done YA before. So I wound up getting a new agent. And with that agent, I wrote a new book. That book we went out on submission with, so she sent it out to editors, and nobody bought that one either until recently. So that book, that second book I wrote, will come out in spring 2022, which is exciting, right? So like, don't ever give up on things that you've written, because you just never know. Eventually, one day it might be time for it to be published. So the first editor to respond to the submission of the second book asked my agent if I was working on anything else, because while she wasn't super into the story that I was telling with that second book, she did like my writing style. She loved my dialogue. So there were elements of my writing that she was really impressed with, and she wanted to know if I was working on anything else. And I wound up getting 12 hours to pull together a new idea, and I'd use those 12 hours to pull together the idea for Dear Martin, and they bought it. So that's atypical. Most people are not going to buy a debut novel on proposal. I also don't recommend anybody try to sell a debut novel on proposal, because after she bought it, I had to write it, of course, and then I wrote it and I turned it in, and it didn't match the editor's vision. But once an editor has paid for a project, you kind of have to match the editor's vision. So I definitely don't recommend selling a book before it's written, if it's your first time writing a book, or if it's your first time selling a book. But yeah, it's been kind of from there, I just wrote more books, sold more books, and just keeping it going, because I really enjoy this job. I am currently with my third agent. My second agent was great, but like, we just got to a point where it was time to split. It was time to part ways, and I went to a different agent. So now I'm with my third agent. She's wonderful, and we just keep trying to make magic together. Publishing is an interesting space. I do love what I do. I don't always love the process for getting to do it, but that's okay. We press on, Miss Queenie.
Yes. Okay. Who is your favorite character in one of your books, and why?
My favorite character out of all of my books is Jupiter Charity Sanchez. She is this girl on this cover. Jupiter is who I would have been if I had been out of the closet in high school. And there's so many things about her that I just really adore. She's very feisty. She's a go-getter. She cares a lot about other people, but she also makes some pretty like grave errors, and she makes some gigantic mistakes that hurt people. And I think that it's her humanity. Her humanity is what I appreciate the most about her. Like, she does some messed up things. Like, I don't really like perfect characters. Like, I don't like characters who don't have moments where I don't like, if I'm reading a book and there's at no point do I dislike the main character, I'm not going to like the book, because I think that, like, as people, it's important for even the characters that you love to have moments where you question what they're doing, right? Like, it's just in order for characters to read as human to me, I can't like everything they do. And I don't like everything that Jupiter did. Even as the person who was writing her, there were things that I discovered in the writing that I was like, girl, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? Right? Like, I'm just like, what would you do? Why would you do that? But it also made me just really, really like her a lot. So she's a bit of a heroine of mine, which is a strange thing to say. Like, a character that I created is one of my heroes. I guess I'm a writer. I get to do what I want, right?
Yes, yes. What book has made the greatest impact on your life today?
Oh, Dear Martin, by far. It was the first book. It's the first of my books to ever hit the bestseller list. It's the only book I've had so far that's been a #1 New York Times bestseller. It's the book that gets talked about the most, the book that sells the most. It's the book that, gets people interested in talking to me. And yeah, I will forever be indebted to good old Justice McAllister for breaking my life open with his story.
What has been the greatest accomplishment in your literary career?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, I would say my greatest accomplishment is rooted in all of the emails I get from kids who are like, I've never finished a book before, but I read Dear Martin the whole way through and it's my favorite book. So, like, getting kids to read who don't like to read or who don't realize they like to read, because I think anybody will love to read if they're reading something that holds their attention, right? If you're reading something that you like, that you can connect with, it's really easy to love reading. So that has been my greatest accomplishment, is creating something that the people who don't realize they like reading yet read and are like, oh, I think I might be into this.
Do you read your reviews, and how do you feel about having reviews, whether they're bad or good?
I do not read reviews ever. I am a person, once I have written the book, my part is done, right? So reviews to me are for readers, not for writers. Like, it's like reviews, like, okay, for instance, the person who creates a vacuum on Amazon and sells it on Amazon, like, they're not going to look at Amazon at those reviews to see how they can improve their vacuum. They're actually doing, like, consumer studies where they bring people into a lab. So, do you understand what I'm saying? So, like, the reviews are for other people who are looking to purchase the product. Like, I don't see reviews as something for me, so I don't read them. I will say that I think reviews are awesome, but also that books belong to their readers. So once the book is out of my hand, people are allowed to say whatever they want about it. Like, if you read the book and you hate it, cool. If you read the book and you love it and you want to shout about it, appreciate you. But yeah, no, I'm like, I'm good. I'm just keep writing the books. Do what you feel with them.
Okay. What inspired you to be an author?
Not seeing stories with people who look like me in them. I've always been a lover of story. It's interesting, today, one of my very, very, very best friends from middle school texted me. She's a doctor now, right? So, like, we used to sit on the phone in middle school making up for hours on end, just making up stories about things. And it's so cool getting to talk to her now that I'm, like, basically a storyteller for a living, and getting her feedback and, like, hearing, like, girl, I remember when we was talking about this, and this, and you wanted to write some movie where Jim Carrey was going to be the dad, etc. So, like, having somebody who has known me since I was a child and has known that I've loved stories for a long time, having that reminder has been really good for me recently. I took a long time, though, to actually sit down and start writing. I was like 28, I think, when I decided I was going to write a book for the first time.
Yeah.
Part of the reason it took me despite being a lover of books and stories as a kid, it took me a while to see myself as any sort of person who could write, because there just wasn't any representation, you know, like I didn't see girls like me in books. I especially didn't see girls like me in books, like doing anything I would want to do.
Yeah.
The male characters I would see, African-American male characters I encountered in books were always like either like escaped slaves or some kind of criminal or some kind of scapegoat for something. So I definitely didn't want to live that life. And then I was reading like Toni Morrison and Alice Walker, and like I didn't want to be Celie. Loved Celie. Love Shug Avery. Shug Avery is by far, she's probably number 2 on my list of favorite literary characters ever. But I also like didn't necessarily want to, like, there are things about Shug Avery that I absolutely adore, and that like I'm like, yeah, I'm a little bit of Shug, but I didn't want to live her life, right? Like I didn't want to live the life of Pecola Breedlove from The Bluest Eye. As much as I love that book, that's not a life I wanted to live. So knowing that I wasn't really seeing myself presented the way I was seeing white characters presented, where they got to be the hero and they got to kiss the boy and they got to like kiss the boy or the girl. They got to be they got to be the love interest, and they got to do all of these things and go on these adventures and solve these mysteries. Like those were the books where I was missing. So I decided that I was going to write them and put myself in them.
Okay. How do your family, what's the family support? Are your family reading the books, or
oh yeah,
how do they feel about
they
the
love
book?
it. It's really, so my 8-year-old, I made my 8-year-old read Clem Getaway over the summer. And he loved it. And yeah, my family is super supportive and always has been. Like I have been super blessed with regard to having like both the parents and the siblings and the spouse who are very like, yes, we want you to pursue these things that you love. We want you to tell these stories. We want you to do what you dream of doing. And honestly, I don't think I could be doing any of this stuff without that support. So that has been, it's been one of the most amazing parts of this process, is knowing that I am like loved and supported by the people I care about the most.
Tell us a little about your writing process.
So my writing process, there's actually a mnemonic on my website that I use, but I only eat raspberries is the sentence that I use to describe my writing process. The I is for inspiration, which is where I get the idea for the story. It can come from anywhere. Just the other day, one of my mentors sent me a news story about there's like an area code in Alabama somewhere. There's like a town in Alabama somewhere where the area code for the telephone numbers is 666. And they just, right, as your face changed, they just got it changed. Like after years and years and years of petitioning, they finally convinced the phone companies to change the area code. And I got an idea for a story just from reading that news article, right? So after that, what I would do, once I have that idea, I move into the O, which is organization. And for that, I buy a composition notebook. I have a book coming out next fall, August 31st, called Fast Pitch. And so once I got the idea for this book, I go in and I just start like jotting stuff down. And so like the book will be full of notes and character names. And like, so like these are the names of the characters. This is the outline, like part of the outline for the book. So I go through and I organize my thoughts for the story. And then I create an outline. Like I'm not a writer who can function without an outline. Once I have an outline, I move into the E, which is execution, which is when I sit down and I write a draft of the book. I'm in execution phase on Fast Pitch right now. And then once I finish, I go into revision, which is when I like make the book into something that's actually readable. Like there's no such thing as a perfect first draft, obviously. So things have to be edited, and revision is where those edits happen.
Okay. What is the most difficult part about writing for you?
Revision. I hate it passionately. I would rather throw things at the page and just let it go out into the world like that. Like, let me do a first draft and then everybody can read it. But that's unfortunately not how this tends to work.
Mm-hmm.
That part, yeah, is definitely my least favorite. I also struggle a bit with world building. So like every time I write a book that's not set in reality, so every time I write something that's not realism, the first set of notes I'll get back from the editor always have something to do with the fact that it needs more world building. Like I need to do a better job of like describing a space because people don't have a concept in their minds already for whatever it is that I'm talking about, for whatever it is that they're reading about. So yeah, world building and revision are.
Okay. What, in your opinion, are the most important elements of good writing?
Oh, that's actually a tough question. Because for me, the idea of good writing is so subjective. You know, like something that I think is horrible, somebody else will think is the best book ever, and I think that that is allowed. Writing is one of those things where so much is left up to the reader, kind of in the sense of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you know, it's good if it's readable. That's the first thing is that it's readable. For me, the best stories are fast paced. They have like excellent character development. So like I need characters who read to me like people.
Mm-hmm.
And voice is super important to me. Like if I'm reading a book, I want to hear the voice of the narrator as like a very distinctive thing. And it's a difficult thing to explain.
Mm-hmm.
Voice is definitely not something that can be taught, but when it's there and you can tell it's there. And that answer was probably not helpful at all. Sorry, Queenie.
Is there any way you can read a snippet from the new book?
Ooh, yeah, I guess. Where did it go is the question. Let's see. I'll read the whole first page like that. Part 1, the end. Snapshot, 2 boys on a brand new playground, 2010. It didn't take much for Quan to decide he was leaving this time. He feels a little bad, yeah. Knowing Deja and Gabe are still in the house makes his stomach hurt the way it always does when he finds himself faced with grown people problems he can't fix. But Quan's only 9. Running away alone is hard enough. Trying to bring a 4-year-old sister and a 2-year-old brother just isn't going to work. He's glad spring has sprung early. Didn't have time to grab a jacket as he fled. He's pretty sure there was too much commotion for anybody to notice, but he takes a few unnecessary turns en route to his destination in case Olaf, that's what Quan calls his mama's duck-ass boyfriend, which is what Quan's dad calls the guy, did notice Quan's exit. What Quan is sure of, he couldn't stay there. Not with dude yelling and throwing things the way he was. Quan knows what comes next, and he couldn't watch again. It was hard enough seeing the aftermath bloom in the funny-looking bluey purple blotches that made Mama's arms and legs look like someone had tossed water balloons full of paint all over her. He couldn't really do anything anyway. Though Olaf, the White's the guy's real name, isn't too big, he's a whole heck of a lot stronger than Quan. That was the first page.
Oh, okay. What books or authors have most influenced your own writing?
Good question. I would say there are a lot of authors and books that have influenced my own writing. Books, this is a book. So when I say that a book influenced my writing, what I mean is that like it let me see that there were things that I could do that I didn't realize I could do. So for instance, Monster. This is Monster by Walter D. Myers. And Monster is a book, the whole book is written as like, it's basically written as a screenplay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as a person who loves to play with form in writing, like I love telling stories in a way that's not just all of the words straight up and down on a page and the same font on every page. Like I like switching it up a bit. For instance, it's actually a really good example. In Dear Justice, there's a section, there's a screenplay section. So like there's stuff like this in Dear Justice. There are like lists in Dear Justice. And I have a lot of fun writing things a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's important for me to stay, like if I'm not getting bored while writing a book, chances are a reader's not going to get bored while they're reading it. And like I don't want, as a person who writes books specifically for kids who don't think they like to read, keeping things interesting is super important to me. So books like Monster help me realize that like, oh, I don't actually have to write this straight up and down. Like I can write it in really any way that suits my fancy, as long as it makes sense when a reader is reading it. An author who influences me tremendously is Jason Reynolds. So these are actually Jason Reynolds books that nobody has. So I am a huge Jason Reynolds fangirl. Like full disclosure, he is like kind of a big brother to me. Like we're pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
But Jason's books, I started reading right after I started writing my own. And Jason is one of those writers whose books, again, gave me permission to do things I didn't think I could do in writing. In this case, just writing in the voice that comes naturally to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Jason as an author influences me pretty intensely. Laurie House Anderson, she influenced me with regard to subject matter and just helping me to see that it's possible to address heavy stuff in books written for children. Yeah, who else? Those are the main people. Jacqueline Woodson, of course. Like I think Jacqueline Woodson influences everyone. I remember there was this one amazing moment when I got to stand and have a conversation with Jacqueline Woodson about craft. Another Brooklyn, one of her adult books had just come out and I devoured it. Like it's short, but it's just written so beautifully. And I got to sit and pick Jacqueline Woodson's brain about how to write a short literary novel. And like, it's a conversation I'll never forget, like the tips that she gave me, they will never leave my mind. So really people who look like me, but are just doing really, really dope things in the literary world, they all influence me in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, Miss Wilson is from here.
Yeah.
Yes. What do you do when you're not writing?
Read, sleep, play with my kids. I like making random things. I love playing with makeup, board games. I'm usually writing though. It's the thing. Like I'm pretty much always writing. I'm at a point now where I have like 3 books a year. Like I'm scheduled to do 3 books a year, and that's a lot. So I pretty much constantly have to be writing, and I don't mind it. Like I love it, like it's my favorite thing to do. So it makes perfect sense that, I'd be doing it all the time without complaining.
So what do you like to read and what are you currently reading?
Honestly, I just really love good books. Like if it's good, I want to read it, right? So it can be any genre. Right now I'm sitting next to a stack of poetry books that I really enjoyed. There's some YA sitting around me. I'm sitting in my office on the floor, and my office floor is literally littered with books. So I'll show you some of the things that are sitting next to me here. So these 2 just came out. They're awesome. Fly Girls. So these are these like little easily digestible, read it in 45 minutes. They're really great. Ashley Woodfolk is the author of these. And they're basically like just Black girls being Black girls in America doing life, right? Just doing things that kids do. They just happen to be Black and female.
They call Fly Girl?
Fly Girls, 2 Y's. Highly, highly, highly recommend these. They're excellent. I am also reading some nonfiction. What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker by Damon Young. This is hilarious. It's kind of this book of like satirical essays that are actually very, very like heavy hitting. Super great. I love this. I love Damon's voice, and I love the things that he covers in that book. And then I just have like stacks and stacks of poetry books, because poetry is also excellent to read, especially at times when like I've been struggling lately with focus, just because like we're in a global pandemic and it's stressful. And so a lot of people are familiar with Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a poetry collection of hers that I don't think a lot of people know exists. So this is called Beast Girl and Other Origin Myths. And this is Liz's poetry, and it's fantastic. So like stuff like this is also really great. Mahogany Brown, same thing. She wrote Woke Baby, amongst a few other things. Her debut YA comes out next year. It's called Chlorine Sky, and this is one of her poetry collections. So I'm just surrounded by everything, and I love books that give me a new perspective on life. This one, The Brave, by James Byrd. This is a book by the author is Native American. He's Ojibwe is the tribe that he's from, and so the character in the book is also, he's half Native American, and you just get this new perspective into things, right? And I think we often have these myths in our minds regarding people who are different from us, and there's nothing like a piece of literature to debunk some of those things and give you a bit more understanding about like how people actually are, and how in so many ways, despite cultural differences, we're a lot alike.
What since the pandemic, what have you been doing to promote, or is there no signings or going out anywhere?
No, I mean, that's not really, signings and stuff aren't feasible right now. So I will say that if you are a person watching this and you are in Atlanta, we are going to do a drive-through signing. We're going to see how this works, how it goes. Like, everybody will have to be masked. The booksellers will have gloves on. Like, there will be a lot of like extreme precautions taken. But you will be able to drive, and I'll sign as you hold the book out of the car type thing. So we'll see how that goes. I think that's going to be, it's like the second weekend in October, I believe. But other than that, I just sign a lot of book plates. So when people, I'm doing a virtual tour for Dear Justice. And when people when people order the book, there will be a signed book plate that will come with the book it's like a sticker. Basically, I've signed the sticker and I send the stickers to the bookstores that are hosting the events. And so when you get your book, you'll get a sticker with it type thing.
So is there a bookstore here in South Carolina? Is there going to be a bookstore here in South Carolina?
That's a good question. I mean, listen, there's also stores like Brave and Kind Books here in Indicator. Anything you order from there of mine, I will sign. You just have to put a note in the order that you want it signed, because the store is 15 minutes from my house. So I just get in my car and I go and I sign what I need to sign, and then I come back home.
Okay. Can you share something readers wouldn't know about you?
If I was not writing, I would be a neuropsychologist. Your girl is kind of smart. A lot of people don't know, like, I'm like a huge math and science nerd. I love the science of the mind and the brain, and neurology. And so like combining neuroscience and psychology was like a dream of mine. So I was going to head into neuropsychology, but then I got a book agent and just completely changed directions. But I love it though. Like, I'm glad that I made the choices that I did. I do miss actual school though, because like I'm one of those people who really liked school. Like I loved school as a general concept.
Okay. So you have a psychology degree at Spelman, is that correct?
I do. That is correct.
Okay. How can readers find you and your books?
I am on Instagram at GetNicked. I am on Twitter. No, that's wrong. I am on Twitter at GetNicked. I am on Instagram at Nick Stone, NICSTONE. And my website is www.nickstone.info. So all of those places you can find me. I'm not hard to find.
So you're not on Facebook?
No, I'm actually not on Facebook. I left Facebook in 2013 and I haven't looked back, though I have had, Facebook owns Instagram, and I've had friends at Instagram who work at Instagram tell me that I need to get back on Facebook, and I just can't bring myself to do it. I'm just like, nah, I think I'm all right.
Okay, last question. Is there anything else you would like to add before we close?
Not really. How's your school? Have you started like teaching back yet?
Yeah, this is third week.
How's it going?
We was doing 1 day, but now we're doing 2 days. It's going good. We just do 2 days a week. The kids just do 2 days a week.
They're coming in. They come into the building.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Like they have different color coded. So like my son is blue team, so he goes on Monday and Wednesday, and Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday he's at home. But then it's completely closed down on Fridays, so it's all e-learning on Fridays.
Oh my gosh, that would drive me crazy. I'm proud of you. I'd be like, look, either y'all going or y'all stay at home. I can't do this in between time thing.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming in today. I really appreciate it. I
appreciate you having me.
All right. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.